Instead, I chose something different. I chose the impossible. I chose Tumblr in action. A place where no one would fear the censor, where opinions would not be bound by petty ideologies, where the average would not be constrained by the extreme. And with our right to speak these opinions, Tumblr in Action can have a podcast as well.
So this time on the Tumblr in Action podcast, we've got something really special, actually. As many of you know, we've had a bit of a Quinspiracy going on over the past about a week or so, and today's guests are pretty well versed in that sort of thing. Welcome to the show, MundaneMatt.
Hello.
And Matt from the Fine Young Capitalists.
Hey.
Two Matts. We have a little bit of a Matt-spiracy here. Well, no, I take that back. That was a terrible joke. I apologize. But anyway,
There's
welcome.
always Matt jokes. You could say, welcome, Matt. Oh, wait, I think you did.
Well, either way, I apologize for a terrible joke and just welcome to the show. So, both of you guys are pretty well experienced with handling the sort of fallout from the whole Zoe Quinn explosion and everything else that's resulted. So, I guess just for those who are coming into this uninformed, go ahead and explain your relation to the whole situation. I guess we can start with MundaneMatt.
Yeah, sure. So the other day, I think it was a week ago yesterday, I was sent a link to the Zoe Post blog, and by one of my friends who's a female game developer, and I read through it and, thought it was, it was a guy who was really upset with his ex-girlfriend, and I wasn't going to really do anything on it. But then I got to the whole part with the journalism side of it and, that there's questions of ethics and morality, integrity. And so I decided to do a video about it thinking, it's just going to be maybe small thing, whatever, nothing's going to happen. And so I recorded my video, uploaded it, and then went about my business. The next day, Sunday, so a week ago today, it got posted on a Zoe Quinn thread on Tumblr in Action. And it was going up to maybe like 4,000, a little over 4,000 views. And then Monday morning, I was hit with the DMCA claim on the video, and it was taken down, and the person who did it was Zoe Quinn. And that kind of sparked this huge internet backlash, which I think led to kind of where we are right now. And so it's been this kind of real big whirlwind experience all the way through. But interestingly enough, was on Thursday, I received a notification that the copyright claim had been lifted. And I thought it was because Zoe was trying to do damage control and get rid of it. Turns out, YouTube had said there was no valid evidence to support DMCA on this video, so they released it. But I was able to confirm that it was her who was in fact the one who filed the claim. And so since then, it's just really been kind of like figured this whole thing out. There's been so many things going on, and it feels like just an ongoing saga that we're still like really in the middle of right now. But it's been crazy. Met a lot of new people, got a lot of more subscribers, and I mean, I don't know what else to really say about it.
Yeah, it's certainly a crazy situation all around. And Matt, other Matt from the Fine Young Capitalists, I guess go ahead and explain your whole, I guess, game jam sort of thing.
Okay, so start at the very beginning. We were dealing a lot with groups in Toronto, and there was a lot of support for women, like from an education end, but they weren't kind of taking something to the end production. And we thought, hey, why don't we just do it where women come up with ideas, we'll get them to work with professional concept artists to like visualize their game, and then the internet will choose the best game, and then we'll make it, and then we'll give the profits to charity. And the whole concept was it was basically to just give people a justification about why women should be in games. And I know that sounds really bad, but it was more that it was like, let's have them make good games, and then people will see that they're really good at them, and then they can support them and be part of it. And that will hopefully, as I keep saying, destroy the patriarchy or get people to actually care about the games. So what happened was, this was way, way back in February, just at the very end of February, beginning of March. I was actually walking home in the dark and cold, and somebody actually started tweeting at me just asking about this particular contest we were running. And they asked who were involved, and I gave them our media coordinator at the time's name and the director's name, who's Lola. And then my company, because I really didn't want to be involved, but I'd taken my name off everything because I just didn't feel like I really didn't feel like I was a good person to represent the production, actually, at that point. And what happened is, basically, a bunch of different friends, bunch of like, people were asking questions about who was doing it and who was involved. And one of them was Zoe, and she just asked, I really have some questions about the contest. I need you to answer them. And I said, okay, you can email them to media@thefineyoungcapitalist, or you can just ask them here. And her two things were, why do we expect women to work for free? And a bunch of other things. But the main point is that we said to her that the women weren't working for free. They would get 8% of the game. And this kind of sparked a storm on Twitter. And we didn't even know who she was, and we didn't know why we should care, but we received a lot of tweets in that moment. I don't think we've received, during this whole campaign, we've ever received more tweets in a specific time than at that moment. And basically, like, it's good to explain that it's still like a whole bunch of voices that we're doing it. It wasn't just her, but she basically denial of service attacked the site. So the site went down. I got banned from Twitter because I was responding to somebody who had put up my personal information, and some various other conversations that went back and forth. And what the assumption was like, oh, that happened. That was great. The internet will forget about it. And basically what happened is that no, it didn't. Again, not so many people were referencing that specific Zoe in particular. It became this difficult thing that whenever we would engage in social networking things, people would keep bringing up that we were scam artists who were exploiting women, etc., and so forth. And it just made it difficult for the campaign to spread virally.
So basically, she was the instigator of the whole social justice warrior backlash.
The thing that we want, that I'm always specific to say, is people before and people after who had no correlation with her had problems. We met people face to face and we explained it, and they had problems. We met people over phone and we did email stuff, and we've always had some people really support it, some people really don't. And it's important to say that even after that happened, there were tons of people who knew nothing about Zoe, but still disapproved of what we were doing.
Now, do they all sort of fall into the social justice warrior sort of archetype, or was it a little bit more complex than that?
Well, okay, so it's we've been doing a lot of stuff now. So to tell how the story goes, the internet aristocrat did an article on everything that had happened, and that covers both of the people in this podcast, so MundaneMatt and myself. And he brought relevance to a post that I had made on TumblrInAction as a comment. At that point, we had already known, we already had assumed that what was happening at Wizard Chan was known. Like, we had done research on who she was, why, and basically if you Google her name, that's the first thing that came up. And then we were like, well, what exactly happened? And then it was just like, we were a little suspicious about the whole situation to begin with. So when it came up, what I assumed was this was like, old news that TumblrInAction continually pulls. So I'll say this and about 10 people will look at it. And then when the Internet Aristocrat did, we got a lot more traffic. And the main thing was that it was linked to from different sites. So one of the things that happened was 4chan was very interested in the story, and they linked to the link, and they also linked to our site. And one of the things that happened was that 4chan actually started, some of the members started to support us. My line was that it was for the second day in a row, 4chan was the group that was giving us the most money. So I just actually tweeted that out. Thank you, 4chan, for giving us the most money. And I went to sleep thinking okay, that'll be something funny, and maybe somebody will care about the fact that we tweeted that. And then when I woke up, we had about a ton of retweets on that topic because everybody thought it was funny. But I also got mail to the media account that were really critical of their involvement. And there was some sort of reference about how they wouldn't take anything seriously, and it would be butt cancer or something like that. And colon cancer, I already knew colon cancer was a relatively big thing, so I wrote out a post about it and just saying that A, will take support from everyone, and if they like games and that transcends gender, then they're welcome with us, and butt cancer is a real thing. And that kind of struck a chord with V, A, because it was funny, and B, because they had been instigated in many of the hacking attacks, that their 4chan is just sort of the boogeyman of the internet. So they were just even though there was no evidence that it was a 4chan attack, they were still being blamed for it. So they felt that this would be a good way of dealing with it. And what happened was, not only were they supportive, but they, people were following on it. And I really appreciated their effort. And what they're asking for is we have certain really expensive prizes that were supposed to be if businesses wanted to sponsor us, and they asked if could they combine all their money to get this particular perk. And I just simply said, yeah, that seems fine. Here's a referral link. You can all go through this link. And they said, can we make sure our money's given to one charity? And I'm I have no problem with that either. What charity do you want to do it? And they were okay, how about colon cancer to cure butt hurt? And I was okay, that's fine. I'll tweet that out. And I made a comment I never thought I'd write that on this production, and people retweeted that, and people thought it was funny. And what happened is I said 4chan actually helped out a lot, but also most of the communication with them was actually quite pleasant. They were actually interested in the project, and there was a lot of communication going on. But I felt that a joke is only so funny that it wouldn't reach $10,000. So I said, why don't I do a video for you? You guys can tweet out what you want it to be, and then I'll just make that video, and this would be something to at least show how much you helped. Because at that point I was very suspicious as if the production would work. And I did the video. They asked to do it on game developers, and as I said, I was surprised. So I did a video on Roberta Williams, just discussing what she did. And that got a lot more kind of hits, and that kind of got a lot more discussion going. And then the point became, one of the things is you can't ask anonymous questions on Twitter, but a person said to me, one of the we were trying to find interesting points, and we did demographic information, and we found that 90% of the people contributing to production were men. And I tweeted that out, and that was funny. And someone said, well, maybe that's just because they haven't heard about the production. And I was maybe the people who are really interested in feminism haven't heard about it. And I'm okay, that could be correct. And then I did I just started a Tumblr, and I literally said, ask me questions. And then I got a ton of questions now that they could ask them anonymously about what the project, but not only like why women developers are important and what do I feel about feminist issues. And all I did basically was answer them as politely as I could with horrible spelling mistakes and everything else like that while answering tweets. And that apparently, like a lot of people like this conversation and like this communication, and it just, a lot of people started submitting it. V reached this point where they got what would be a concept art, like we would create a concept art for a character for them, and they basically did a character, which, oh my god, I can't believe I'm blanking on it. All of V is now going to yell at me. Vivian James. And like, this was, they wanted to do this character because they wanted to show like what kind of character 4chan would want to like represent women in games or to be in this kind of game contest. And they just made like a regular sort of girl who looked like she was playing games. And again, like, I got the image and I said, this seems completely fine. We can probably integrate this in any of the games. Let's go with that. And then they had, they just said her name's Vivian James and here's her bio. And I said, we will incorporate that as good into the lore as possible. And I posted that to Tumblr. And what happened was that the main criticism that I get isn't what we're doing, it's who I'm associating with, or that I'm not meeting their standards. So one of the first message we got after I posted it on Tumblr was how 4chan would like curate this lolly sexualized girl or whatever, and A, she's not, he's really projecting into it, and B, it was deliberately meant to start a fight. And I was just saying like, no, she's a multi-dimensional character, please don't project your fetishes onto it. And like, as soon as I did that, we got more comments, like even on email, and I just like had to warn people, like, please don't slut shame Vivian James. She is literally, 4chan's daughter. Like, this is not the fight that you should get into today. And that was picked up a bit. And again, I just don't print those Tumblr posts about that kind of thing. So those are all going on, and I did answered a lot more questions, and we were ready to do something with Vivian James the next day. But what happened was I woke up at around 4 and saw that I had a lot more emails than I normally do. Emails are usually sent when there's a big problem. And what had happened is apparently during the night, someone had managed to hack Indiegogo, our Indiegogo site, and take it down, and they were referencing Zoe Quinn and what we were doing to her, and this is why the site should go down. And they changed it so you could still donate, which I found funny because people were still donating when it's that don't donate to this project. And then the whole site they just managed to somehow get it off Indiegogo. The guys in Indiegogo are still trying to figure it out. And I woke up about like 40 minutes after that happened. And we had always planned that, because like the only topic people ask us to talk about, like the first thing they always ask us about is Zoe. And it's been like this thing where it's just like, I am repeating the same story. There's not much else I can do. And I've worked in the industry that like again, some of the conspiracy theories, I'm just like, the timeline doesn't work, and I'm really uninterested in continuing this. So we were really planning to just bury the hatchet the next morning, and I just said when the site went down and when that people were doing it for Zoe, I just simply said that really this antagonism between the new groups is completely pointless. 4chan, you've made this really great avatar, that I actually like, even though I can't remember its name. The email, the first email had a different name attached to her, and that's what I always remember her as. I just said, this character is really good, and it really depicts the message that we wanted to bring, that we wanted to have some sort of way that when people go to gaming conventions, you could signify that you actually cared about, actually having multiple people, inclusivity, basically, that you cared about women, that you cared about minorities, that you wanted to game with them. And we said, let's just use this as a representation of it. And just because to show that we're the bigger man, let's just give the money to the depression charity, like Zoe wanted to, because really it doesn't matter where the money goes to. The important thing is that we all, we actually bring equality to the gaming scene. And there's still opinions about that. And I'm still waiting to see where that one falls. If Indiegogo had set up our site already, then I'd be dealing with that more directly. Right now, I'm just basically being very irritated with them. But the crucial point was, it was sort of meeting it, and there was so much sort of confusion, and people were wondering if our Twitter and our Tumblr were also hacked, which they weren't. They wanted me to talk, that I just did this 4-hour live stream where I basically answered a couple questions about what was going on and talked about equality and feminism and gender theory for the next 4 hours on Twitch. And then that stream ended, and since then I've been just running around actually doing work for one of my other clients that actually pays me.
If I can interject for just one moment, I'm getting tweets right now that are telling me that the Indiegogo page is back up.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me. Sorry, thank you for that. Thank you for that. That does not surprise me.
Although it does need, I'm looking at it right now, $25,581 out of $65,000.
I reached the end of the "I'm going to strangle you" kind of thing. Yeah,
no, I understand.
Good to hear. So the crucial point was that, I actually don't think that this would be Zoe, because all it's going to do is get us media attention, and we had so much problems getting media attention before that legitimately now there's quite a big story. So I don't think it was Zoe. I do feel it was some people that wanted to manipulate the situation so that it was more dramatic and more funny. And I'm like, well then, huzzah, you guys succeeded at it, but I'll see you in hell.
Yeah, I noticed the hacked page mentioned V there, and it had the V is capitalized, and it sort of harkened back to when Phil Fish's page, now the name escapes me.
It was a Polytron Corporation.
Polytron, that's right. When Polytron's site was hacked, and it had sort of a capitalized V there, sort of to pin the blame on them or to go back to them or something. Do you think maybe those are related in any way?
If I was initiating a hack, the person I would blame is 4chan, and the second person I would blame is Anonymous. I do believe that the majority of what's going on is people trying to inflame the situation, and it's there are, again, asking 4chan what they want to do for a video on feminism, and them saying game developers, then doing the video. And as for the hackers, my basic line is that I think there were funnier ways to do it, but their level of hacking proficiency, you guys were awesome. You guys totally beat us on breaking the password, and we're going to be 100 times more secure now. So to that, I salute you, but by the same token, I expect to see them in hell.
I guess that's a good way to go about it.
Yeah.
So this really raises a bigger question, this whole scene of people being so fired up about this whole situation, and what you mentioned about not falling into the same sort of ideology as some of the people like on Tumblr and I guess Twitter when you were talking about before, some of the problems that people had with it. When this whole concept of not wanting to break ranks in the game development scene, I guess to be more closer to the indie development scene, but mostly the games journalism scene. And we're seeing that now with the lack of coverage on Zoe Quinn and the whole situation, and people outright denying that anything has ever happened. I mean, every major article I've seen so far, except maybe like 2, have all attributed this sort of thing to internet misogyny, which sort of goes back to Anita Sarkeesian, and whenever she was receiving a ton of shit over like Twitter and YouTube and all that stuff for her thing.
Yeah, like I refer to this as templating. So like one of the issues that I have is like all of the articles are written identically. They just kind of change the names around. So it's just that it's a really enforced sort of narrative. And it's something that you can literally just do the title and you don't have to read the article. You can just basically reread it in your mind. And it's good because it's like doing a sequel. Like, the audience will already like it. And it's a good way to get views. It gets people angry. But the issue with it is that there isn't, like, when 4chan isn't an entity. 4chan is simply made up of multiple anonymous users. So it's difficult to determine if they're actually the ones who are engaging in this behavior or not. And I find like our whole thing was just like breaking the narrative. So like one of the lines I said was when people said that 4chan weren't allowed to donate, I was like, that's oppression by definition. Like, you are making your own social justice and you're destroying the narrative that people have spent so much time to create. If you just want to destroy the narrative, support 4chan. But if you're saying they can't do it, then it's like you're both looking stupid and destroying the narrative.
This is just what they do, though. They, 4chan they think is all white men or boys or teens living in their mother's basement. And they're not marginalized or oppressed, and therefore they can never actually be that way when this being acted upon them. It's really messed up SJW logic.
Well, it's just, like, when I speak about it, like, the main thing that I find with this sort of movement is why you're doing it is to actually create an identity for yourself more than anything else. So it's like a lot of the people it's very, very important that they are like they are the moral center. Okay, like they know everything about these particular issues, and they use that as sort of like a way of that's their influence, that's their power. And the issue is that when you start to do things like in a different way, it just makes them like, especially it's not only like if 4chan is the definition of everything that's bad in their mind and they're supporting them, then it's just like you're robbing them of their ability to feel like they're the moral center. And like that's what I'm feeling. Like it's a loss of identity because no one ever goes up to me and says, this is why you're doing something wrong. They always tell me, like, you can't associate people. And it's kind of like one of the lines I keep saying to people is, if 4chan is like, why are you talking to 4chan? And I'm like, if everybody believed the same thing as me, then I wouldn't be able to change anybody's opinion. I'm talking to these people, A, because they seem to really like it and have good ideas, but 2, if what you're saying is true, then this is the only way that I can change their opinion. And ironically, 4chan seems to be changing their opinion much quicker than, say, Tumblr.
Well, I can kind of speak on behalf of 4chan in this regard. They've somehow, in this situation, made me their unofficial spokesperson.
Yeah.
To an extent, because I'm speaking on hacking the hacking thing with Phil Fish's thing tomorrow with somebody else, and I was nominated to do so apparently. They're taking this thing seriously, and I've been on 4chan for a number of years, like almost, I think almost 7-8 years. I've been on there. They rarely take anything this seriously. You know, like last night when the Indiegogo campaign went down, I was out and about, and all of a sudden my phone just lit up. I was getting tweets left and right, like people saying, "Get home, get on your computer, like we need to talk to you. This is what's going on." And I guess like the way that 4chan is feeling it right now is that they're being blamed for something that they didn't do. Yeah. And we all know 4chan, if they do something, they like to take credit for it.
Yes.
You know? And so they're actively going out there and saying, no, we didn't do this. You know, and as you said, Vivian James is very much like their daughter. When I was reading off the bio they had created for her yesterday, I was like, oh yeah, I can see they really care about this. Like the little in-jokes that are in her name and her nickname, you know, and her online handle, and all of these things that are totally referencing back to the website. It shows you that they care, and they never care about anything. And so
like my big thing about 4chan is like, because it's literally anonymous, there's no glory and there's no reward. So the only reason you do something is if you really like it. Yeah. So what that means is if something survives to the end of the production, like meaning that like if it actually reaches to a finished product, it has to be good. Because the only reason the person's making it is they feel good making it. And I think, like, again, that's the purest form of art. And I think it's really, like, an interesting culture that can exist. And that's why, as you said, like, they do seem very serious about it, and it actually is particularly well done. And in comparison to other sort of groups where, like, I'm not going to knock Reddit, like, basically, let's just knock Reddit for this. But when you actually have like upvotes, or when it matters, like when those are tied to an identity, then people will start doing things just for the prestige that it gives them, and it's a different kind of aesthetic. Where in 4chan, it's really wild and everything else. And even when we were talking about cleaning up the image, it was like, she has, like, there's lots of small mistakes in there, but they just add so much character that it was one of the few artists who was just like, I can't clean this up. Like, it loses something if I clean it up. And I was just like, okay, let's try to make the animated version look really different then.
Well, I know that they like it quite a bit. You know, I was just actually surfing V, looking in there. It's all over the front. It's all over the entire board. Is there still like she's dead, but I don't think they know that it's back up yet. So
okay, well that's good that that's transferred between them. But it's like, first of all, I really appreciate 4chan, that everything that 4chan's doing. Reddit is actually, like, certain sections of Reddit are actually really helpful. Certain sections are not. And Reddit has just a general culture of like self-promotion, and inevitably speaking, don't self-promote. And inevitably speaking, I can't, like, because it's my project, I shouldn't really be commenting on it. So they're still doing really interesting things organically. They're just doing it on a smaller level. And Twitter's been really helpful, simply because, you know, there's enough like one-liners, and especially, it's just one after the idiotically long 4-hour feminist cast, which I'm still unsure how the internet considered it. Like, there was one person who was just tweeting like quotes out of context, and it was just I was watching her, and I was just like, this is amazing, and I just had to jump on about like you know, I need to add another out of context quote here, or if you guys really want to be offended, you should see them in context where they're nothing like what she's talking about. But it's been this kind of thing where, again, like, the Twitter community likes it because it's all just one-liners that they can kind of do between each other, and they can kind of deal with, especially because on Twitter it's all about other people seeing you do stuff, that it'll be someone who will make like a very self-serving, altruistic kind of saying, and then someone will immediately reply, "You are phenomenally incorrect on that statement." And that's been going a lot in this kind of thing. And it's really not, like, it is sort of robbing the social justice warriors of this kind of sense of righteousness. And I'm like, that's fine. They have too much sense of righteousness. But
I concur.
But it's also, my thing is, it's very subversive on the level, because all of these groups that have been stereotyped as being misogynists are very supportive. It's just that we're speaking up to them instead of down to them. And we're making it about games and gamers, and not sort of this larger narrative about oppression. That what we need more women making games. It's not that we need less men being jerks. And that difference in narrative, it doesn't allow you to feel morally superior, but if you're not in the class, but it prevents you from having a class where you blame everything on.
So in general, it's like it's just correcting the problem of there being less female developers instead of blaming it on oppression.
Well, it's like nobody has ever asked me how and where and why women developers are oppressed. And my issue is like, we did a lot of reading, and a lot of the articles that are written, especially in the journalists, don't explain that either. So you won't have like information about how you raise how parents raise children, how women see themselves, and all of these things that are really important to determine how what makes a woman developer. Like, one of the things that I said in my talk, which has been horribly retweeted, was that like, if you are a man and you succeed on an indie production that's really good, not only do you succeed financially, but you actually get status that you can then use to engage in relationships. And like, this is like, women gravitate to men who have both power and fame, and everybody knows that. Well, like, conversely, a woman who's like, if you have the choice between an attractive woman who's done nothing or an average woman who's done a lot, you will find that a surprisingly large number of men will choose the attractive one who's done nothing. And what this does is, it sounds like really sad, because it sounds like women aren't being developers because men don't find it hot. And that's not it at all. It's just that men have, those two things are so intertwined that it's like, I will take a year and a half off of my life and not sleep to do this for that glory, because that glory not only helps me financially, but as a person and as a sex partner and everything else, that gives me power, and I'm willing to risk that. And again, it's much more complicated than the discussion that I'm having, but like, these are sort of things that you kind of have to address, and that maybe, we shouldn't be, when women are younger, when they're still girls, we should allow them more freedom to do things, and we should maybe have programs that encourage that. And again, this is a longer lecture than I'm sure TumblrInAction wants, but that's not being said in the conversation, and that's the problem. If you're only running an article that's guess who sucks, men, then you're not only fixing the problem, but you're alienating an entire group that can help.
So it's just an oversimplification, basically, that's working against them.
It's the only person who benefits from it is the writer, is the journalist themselves. And that's because it's clickbait. And like, that's the problem.
Yeah, we do not take very kindly to clickbait around TIA, for sure.
I don't think anybody does, at all. That's also kind of another point of this. The other side of this situation too is the rise against gaming journalism right now, which I think is directly helping finding the capitalists make their game. Is this, you have this conversation finally, like fucking finally, after all these years, about the clickbait nature of journalism, how the social justice warrior movement has turned into this bully organization. And we've seen it now play out, and it's opening up a lot more dialogue between people. And I think that's one of the reasons why 4chan is coming together the way that it is and working with Reddit to have these discussions in the pockets of Reddit, but also then again the pockets of 4chan, because it goes both ways for both groups. But it's really great to me to see that these conversations are happening, and that instead of just mindless bickering amongst ourselves, people are stepping up and trying to push forward an idea that would actually benefit gaming as a whole. And what saddens me is that you've got an organization, a group, that's usually known for internet harassment or jokes, right? And they're doing something good because they want to. And the media is just going like, well, no, we're just not going to talk about this because this one woman over here had someone say something nasty about her one time. And that's kind of what it feels like.
Well, not only that, but it's just that, like, I talk about access a lot, and how, like, I'm actually reasonably accessible, like, because I've taken time off of work. Sorry, guys, I didn't think I'd be doing shit on the weekend. But, like, because I take time off of work, like, I can actually talk to people, and there's been all these, like, people who've never done an interview before doing interviews with me. And that's why you find these weird interviews on YouTube where it's just like me talking and there's a still. It's because I'll talk to everyone. And that's actually been like disadvantageous for us because like there's no scoop. Like if you call me up and talk to me, then and your competitor calls me, I'll talk to both of you. And it's just like it's a weird way of just like shutting down nepotism. And that's been kind of a weird thing that's happened. That like literally feels like that's happening. That because I'm speaking to everybody and because there's like no ability to like get any exclusivity, it's like, then why should we care? Like there's no trophy. The information is good, but since there's no trophy for me, I would rather not engage.
Yeah, it's nothing to be won, just a dialogue that needs to be had.
Yeah.
And I think this whole situation has sort of done wonders for finally raising that dialogue, because I mean as the gaming industry has grown over the years, you know, there's been almost a sort of necessity for journalism, for reporting, for that sort of thing. And when it gets to the point where things are done for just clickbait, you know, people are just doing it for the money, not to get the word out, when they're getting really sort of incestuous with one another as far as...
Well, it's also, there's just so much money that's blown on marketing. And a lot of that goes into the journalistic industry. So it's like, again, I have not done AAA development before, but I come from like television and film, where it's like 20 million to, if you make the movie for free, you need at least another 20 million just for marketing. And like my statement is like, and that's low for a video game. That's really low. That it's just, if you're, you know, even like the money that just spills out over the edges in journalism, like just in like perks that you get or whatever, like here's your swag bag and that sort of stuff, it just makes it really difficult for the smaller productions to even get any interest whatsoever. And the only way that they've supplemented that is by kind of forming this kind of like clique that they'll all talk to each other, and then they can be the kings of the indie scene. And, you know, that's great if you only want to talk to those people.
Yeah, that's really... It's really sort of... what's the word I'm looking for?
I like the word webcestuous, but...
I guess I can use that, but I guess it's really just hampering on innovation and on creativity. Like if everyone is stuck in the same sort of mindset, the same sort of ideology, like you're going to hear like the same things over and over. And I guess this is almost sort of detrimental to journalism, because when you go and interview them, I know this is kind of stretching a little bit, they're just going to say like the same things over and over again. They're just going to
no. Yeah, they're already clearly doing that, and they're clearly giving their message.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like, I feel that's fine for AAA development. I'm sorry, I do feel that that's okay for AAA development. But it's just that when you're not picking up good ideas because they can't, like, it's not that the journalists are being paid directly. It's that you can't, like, have all the levels of, like, coolness to actually talk to somebody. Then it's difficult, because, like, a project always stays dead. And again, in Canada, like, this is a weird thing, because our government actually, like, supports productions. Like, you can get money to make they don't give you everything, but they'll actually give you tax benefits, or they'll give you startup capital to help you make a game. And the problem is that, literally speaking, the game can be amazing, but because you're not engaging with the media, no one would hear about it. And why, again, like, people wonder why I'm doing this even from, like, a business standpoint. And it's like, to engage with the media and the video games, to actually, like, even be able to talk to some of the people who are, like, famous on YouTube, who have started to retweet me and stuff. Because we were actually, like, trying to talk to them about business relationships and those sort of things, and, like, we couldn't get through. And now they haven't talked to us directly, but at least they've maybe supported us in some way. And it was just, even to me, that's a big thing, because there's so much of a possibility of flashback. And that's why you'll occasionally hear me saying, please don't tweet at this person asking why they're not covering us. I know why they're not covering us. Just let it happen if it happens.
And I guess we can sort of move on to the bigger picture here, is this sort of idea of closed ranks within game journalism. I know we touched on that earlier, but this has really been a big problem for a long time, but we haven't really had a major incident to sort of have this discussion about it. Like, there's been all sorts of accusations of corruption within the industry. I mean, there's that famous image of Jeff Keighley sitting with, Mountain Dew and Doritos, getting paid off to say whatever. And I believe it was Jeff Gertzman from was it Giant Bomb, who was
I think GameSpot at the time.
GameSpot. Okay, yes, right. He works for, well, I don't know where he works at now. Anyway, who was fired for giving a negative review of Kane and Lynch when they were advertising all over the website.
Yeah, I really wanted to. He described that really well, and it's important to understand he wasn't fired for giving a bad review. What he was he gave a bad review, and because they're so focused on, like, rank, like, internally in the company, that it became like a junior producer was like, well, what do we do? Like, Edis is like, I'm 100% sure that the Kane and Lynch guys were just like, well, that sucked, but we're not out for blood. But it was the producers that were actually there, or it was like, I have to show myself to be better. I have to do this. Fuck that guy. Like, literally speaking, they did it as a means to advance their own career in the hierarchy of the company. And just why that's different is that a lot of these sort of really big blowups that I have, because I have some industry experience in other industries, it's not, the sponsors are dicks, but they're not that much of a dicks. It's the fear that people have that the sponsors will leave that causes them to turn on each other. And I think the main thing about video game journalism is because of ad block and whatnot, the revenue's going down, but the bribes are going up. So because of that, there's like like the bribes meeting the swag is going up, that it's becoming more and more difficult to be an honest journalist.
Yeah. And on top of that, now you have the pervasiveness of the social justice crowd in there.
Well, I think, yeah, I just keep in mind, like, they just attract viewers. Like, they don't, like, again, it's even Ubisoft's, like, there's no female character thing that blew over relatively quickly. It's just
yeah, but that's also because that was in essence a non-issue. I mean, people were looking at one piece of information on that particular debate and completely overlooking the truth of it. Was it's the same exact scenario as Watch Dogs. You play as Aiden Pierce the entire time, so a female avatar, if they were going to have one in there, would just be randomized. But the explanation that they gave out was kind of like they could have handled that way better. It was
and that's the Hearthstone tournament and everything else could have been handled way better. Like almost all of those major social justice things, as a feminist and someone who gives a shit, I was still like, I can't really give enough of a fuck in these settings. They don't seem to really matter as much as I wish they would.
Yeah, I guess it's sort of like
the Hearthstone thing was a little crazy though, because because of the aftermath of that, it's like, oh well, this main tournament's open to everybody, but the smaller tournament still ladies only. What really?
Yeah, well, it was. I knew they were just saving face fairly quickly, but I was.
No, I know. They had to in face of the response that they were getting, which but then again, that kind of goes back to this point. Why is it that you've got a small tournament, in Europe that has this, gender bias? I guess they get a lot of attention, but yet we've got now active journalists that I'm air quoting here. That are they're kind of blocking any discussion from happening over this debacle involving them. Like they won't even address it to like even go like, yeah, there might be a problem. Yeah, we'll work on it, sort of thing. Like they're not even doing that at all.
Like again, that sort of Game of Thrones sort of thing that I when I was what became Giant Bomb, what happened to GameSpot, like that's exactly why no one really wants to say anything, because it's so internal that they can use that they can use other people in the industry will use it against them to leverage themselves. So that's why nobody's saying anything.
No, I know.
Literally,
I mean, I get why things are happening the way. I get why they've closed ranks, why they're not talking. But at the same time, it's like we now have pretty strong evidence to suggest that there are some extreme conflicts of interest going on, involving she who shall not be named and her people supporting her financially.
Okay, can I just say one point on that?
Sure.
I really feel that that's a really deep thing in the industry and in just women in general, that I find it really weird that Zoe just can't. This is not a criticism of her. This is a criticism of the larger culture, that Zoe can't monetize herself. Meaning that she can't make games for money, or she can't do basically services for money, and that so much of it has to be tied in this sort of donation thing, that she's not as much a worker in the industry as she's just sort of an ambassador for the industry. And again, the feminist here is just saying we've gotta change the focus of that, but that's entirely just because of the way that they've set up the hierarchy of the industry, and how everybody has to present themselves as kind of this cool, hip person who's it's not a job, it's a lifestyle. And if you have that sort of an attitude, inevitably the women get fucked over. And I think that, as I said, I finally watched her video yesterday, but the paranoia she has is real, because no one has seen her for any of her marketable skills. It's almost entirely her personality, because of the culture of the video games, that she's there. And it's just well, what do you expect is going to happen if we take away that persona from her? It would be it's almost the equivalent of removing someone's arm. It's so much of her worth in the industry is tied to her persona. It's insane. While on the other end of the coin, we've got guys who are popular YouTube personalities or popular reporters or whatever, who are just the most despicable people. And it's just, again, this is the feminist is bitching on TumblrInAction, and I apologize for it. But I didn't when we went in, we didn't think it would be this bad, but just everything that's happened, we're like, oh fuck, we're writing papers on this later.
But then you got you mentioned like personality being tied to things. You've got people like Phil Fish also that will go on like whole Twitter tirades and just go basically insane for.
Someone has to explain this to me because I'm not involved enough in the industry scene. Why do I care what he says? Like, I know he's made Fez, but other than that, why do I need to care?
There's a thing right now that's kind of the best described as like the indie click dev scene. You know what I mean? Like or the indie dev click scene, where it's very kind of like this insular, and these people that make these games that are indie that get notoriety. And Phil Fish is been kind of a larger than life personality. Is
he the Kim Kardashian of like that particular? No,
he's like, if I was going to compare him to anyone from like, let's say Hollywood, I don't even know. He's fucking insane. Is the way I look at him. The guy made a game.
So he's Busey then.
But he's less entertaining because I love Gary. I've seen Gary Busey at E3 playing Grand Theft Auto Vice City. So. Like back in the day and everything. So Busey, I'm a big Busey fan. But Phil Fish, I can see your point there. He goes on these tirades on Twitter, and then immediately shuts down his account. And then he'll wait a little bit, and he'll reopen the account. He'll come back, and he'll spew out more shit. And then every time people start throwing it back at his face, he shuts down his Twitter account. He runs away. Oh, go ahead.
Like, is he undergoing psychotherapy in any way?
I don't believe so, but
it's okay. I'm not gonna. I'm like literally. You guys talk. I'll just digest that. Cause no, like I know his game, and I just had no idea about the Twitter stuff. Like on the conversation, I was kind of looking it up when I was doing that really long sort of streaming thing, and like I knew Fez from like when he first announced it. Like, I thought Fez was dead, and then I was like, what, it came back? Like, the game's kind of cool. But then he has this persona about him that I was just like, I don't know, like, the guy who did, the guy, Miyamoto, or the guy who did Mario, I'd be following his Twitter, but not, again, I just don't understand.
Twitter has become serious business, is the best way to describe it. In terms of like the gaming scene, because people have direct access now to these people, and we've somehow gotten to this point where we put these developers, it's almost like, like with filmmaking, you've got, you'll see Michael Bay's name attached or Steven Spielberg's attached, and you go, oh, okay, they're basically the ones that did it, but they're like the most promoted. And
they're monetizing the name.
And when it comes to Zoe Quinn now, you can see that is precisely the case. Like they're monetizing her name, even though she's not doing anything of real merit.
So the monetizing her like for conventions and stuff to have people come. Okay, that makes a little more sense to me, I guess.
That's kind of what I've seen from it. I have not played Depression Quest. I have no desire to play Depression Quest. I love CYO games, but I don't like. I've played it, and I'm like, this would appeal to a certain group of people. And we actually, after we played it, we're like, maybe we should make a system so that people can like more easily make these kind of games and share them with each other. And like that would be a better kind of project or whatever. Sure. But basically, when somebody said Zoe Quinn hacked me, I'm like, I've seen her programming skills. I don't think that's a worry. Well, no, there was a thing the other night too where it was a big conspiracy right before the Phil Fish Polytron Corporation takedown. There was a picture that Adam Sessler posted on Twitter of him. It was taken by him, and he was sitting in a bar with Zoe Quinn and someone else, and they're drinking, and you can see that the guy behind them has got 4chan up on the laptop, and they're on. So this was Thursday night. Around like I want to say 8-9 p.m. somewhere in there, maybe 7ish. I'm not too sure. Somewhere in the evening, nighttime time, and they were doing that. And then all of a sudden on V, there was a bunch of threads from someone like posting, Zoe Quinn's Twitter screenshots, and they were legit because I was live streaming as this was happening, and I was watching her Twitter as well as covering the other stuff, and she was, it was her stuff, and then those were deleted later on. So we know pretty much that she is going to 4chan, and we know that she is with other people in the industry.
Oh yeah,
kind of trying to derail the conversation.
Just so everybody knows, sorry, I'm sorry, I forgot I've never mentioned this before. We tried to get 4chan pissed at us at one point. We ran ads on 4chan to get women to sign up. They didn't give a shit. We went to the MRA group on Reddit, and we basically did a post that was specifically said, like, we need, what's it called? Sorry, I'm so tired. I'm losing the name. What's it called when you, if two people have equal levels of certification, the minority gets the job? Affirmative action.
Affirmative action, yeah.
I was like, now we have affirmative action for video games, like expecting like there to be reaction, and like they were literally like, well, it's all private money, so it's not affirmative action, and because it's helping women but it isn't taking anything from men, I think that this is actually a good way to do it. And I was just like, what? Like, that is again, like, we didn't do anything in 4chan, we just ran ads for a very short period of time, and they weren't effective. But which is our thing was, like, a lot of these groups that are supposed to, like, rise to anger when a group is actually helping women, they really don't give a shit. Like, even if you run in with a stick.
I think a lot of that too boils down to the fact that it's like they don't look at it like, because when you originally described why you're a feminist, I read that post.
Yeah.
And a lot of 4chan, and I am not a feminist. I believe in equality across the board, but I simply can't identify with that term. But I read your post, and I actually have a lot of respect for your definition of it. And so do a lot of other people, because the way that you wrote it was like way different from the kind of like man-hating woman club that we get bombarded with constantly in these discussions. You know, I have a 22-year-old sister who reblogs stupid Tumblr feminist shit all the time. And I just like look at her and I'm like, do you really believe this? Like, do you honestly believe that this is what your movement's about? And I'm like, it's not. Like, you need, like, I need to actually forward her your statement so she can read that and go, this is what you should be looking at. Like, this is a good way. Thankfully, she's not too far gone. We can pull her back from the brink. But it's the response that you gave is you're coming at this from, like, you know, the internet's reactionary is the best way to describe it. Mm-hmm. And I understand what you were attempting to do, but it wasn't like aimed at that particular group that you were talking to. Like 4chan will react if they feel that someone is being oppressed, but it's like by people who aren't worthy of making those claims. You know? Like, no, they look for corruption and all that kind of shit. And I think they get what you're trying to do, and they're not.
But you have to be honest. You have to at least appear honest with them, or be honest with them. I feel like they're just very good at sensing out if you're lying.
You know, they're very good bullshit meters.
Yeah. Okay. I know I'm not even sure if this is an interesting conversation at this point, but I do feel like if the site's back up, I should probably go back to it. So is it possible for us to kind of just end this up?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I guess the big takeaway here is, you know, it's a big complex situation, and I know we've all had our piece about I guess how there needs to be a little bit more transparency across the board with everything, and people just are so close-minded about certain things that, you know, they're not trying to understand the side that has genuine criticism and concern.
I think it's just, my biggest point here is, as video games are moving more into this model where people are like buying them early and earlier now, that you should have more say over the production, and not so much that you should have more say, but you should get more of a return. That it's just, I just feel that people are really involved in games in like it being part of their identity, but not the actual game, like not taking the time to actually work with it to make it to be a better thing. And that's what the indie scene needs right now. You don't need people that kind of jump on the most popular game to make themselves more popular. You need to work on it when it actually does suck and try to make it better, so that when it's finally done and it's amazing, you could have been through that entire process. And I feel that's what's being lost at the journalistic level, and that's what we're trying to bring in at the consumer level.
Absolutely. I guess final statements from you two.
Oh, you can go first if you want.
Sorry. I literally speaking, I got to talk to. That's them. So I'll let you guys go. Okay. Sorry. That was literally them.
All right. So, Matt, final comments on your end.
Yeah, it's been a whirlwind week. It's not even fully over yet. This particular situation, starting with the blog post, and then making its way on to TIA, and then the DMCA takedown. I'm glad to see that some positivity is coming out of this with the Finding Capitalists game jam. It's good to see that the Indiegogo campaign is back up. I know that the guys from 4chan they were really passionate about the project, and they were genuinely upset when it was taken down because they were like worried that people are trying to force them to react, which is kind of what this feels like with the 3 different hacking attempts this week, with Zoe Quinn's Tumblr being hacked and then her information being doxxed. Whether people believe or own or that it was a legitimate thing, I can confirm that some parts of it are probably real because I was given information with my DMCA. Other parts of it aren't. I just won't say which and everything. And it's good to see the community come together with all of this. It's good to see gamers on 4chan and on Reddit and people that are just tired of the social justice bullshit. Like, I mean, I read TumblrInAction a lot. I'm on there all the time. I'm on there right now, actually. And so, this mindset of these people that are in a perpetual state of victimhood is getting to a breaking point where everyone's like, just shut up. You're not oppressed. You're not a snowflake. You're a person and act like it. And thankfully, this situation has been able to shine quite a big light on that. And hopefully people won't let the conversation be derailed into something that is sexist and misogynist when just criticizing someone for their actions in terms of ethical and moral ideas of journalism and professional basis, is not sexism, it's not misogyny, and it's really awesome to see that more and more people are waking up to this mindset and not letting it just be kind of pushed, plowed over and forgotten about, which is precisely what the gaming media wants to do with their actions of being silent and towing the party line. I understand their reasonings behind it, but it's kind of everyone saying now the fire is rising or the fire rises or whatever they're saying. They want there to be some kind of revolution. They want to be some kind of change. And when you have this many people that are working together towards something, even if it's kind of an amalgamous goal right now, but it's a direction, I think great things are going to happen. And hopefully, we'll see this, the indie game, the Finding Capitalists get their thing off the ground and get Vivian James to be a reality. That's what I hope to happen.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And hopefully also we won't have to keep up with this. Well, I guess this is maybe hoping a bit too much here, but the whole reactionary, at least from the games journalists, that any sort of criticism against a woman or a minority of any sort, if they are accused of wrongdoing or of fuzzing around, if that makes any sense.
No, I understand.
Yeah, how it won't be called like misogyny or an example of oppression.
Well, we've seen now, and I'm sure you've seen this by spending any time on TIA, that misogyny now equals any kind of just debate or discussion or discourse or argument, it no longer means hatred of women.
Oh yeah.
It means now such a broad term because it's a buzzword that's lost all meaning. And now it's like, now they're moving on to bigot because bigot's a word that is really hard to make it lose its meaning, and it's like, pick a term and go with it here. Stop going to Tumblr buzzword, dictionary and pulling from that, you shitlords, and everything. And yeah, we're seeing a lot of people take notice. And, believe me, I've been getting just inundated with comments and requests for to kind of talk to people about what's going on and to keep on the ball. And, I've been doing so many live streams last couple of days, just to kind of keep people talking about it. And it's exhausting, but it's worth it. It's totally worth it to make sure that people are aware of what's going on and to not let this kind of stuff just get blown away. Because there's so many of us and because we have so many distractions in our life, it's easy to kind of forget about this sort of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm hoping that we'll get some form of, what's the word I'm looking for here? I'm hoping for some form of conclusion to the whole process. I just don't know how, I don't know when, I don't know what direction it's going to go. But people are not slowing down. They're not being quiet, and it's been a week later. And so now, who knows what this next week's going to bring? Hopefully something pretty kick-ass.
Yeah, I mean, there's a protest at PAX Prime, I believe, is planned.
I don't know if that's been canceled or not. I know last night, the woman who posted the blog, originally, it was featured on Destructoid in a very mocking tone. And so I think she responded in a very mocking tone. But I don't know if that's been deleted or not. Some people have told me that it has been. I just have not been able to look at the I can check right now. Yeah, the blog has been deleted. So I would say at this point the protest is probably off. Because the Destructoid article is basically saying go there and just mock them. Mock them for standing up against what they feel to be yellow journalism, what they believe to be corruption in the industry. What we have is unfair, is unrefutable proof of some conflicts of interest that need to be addressed, but are being absolutely ignored by the media as a whole. And even people in other medias and other forms of media aren't wanting to touch this.
Yeah. It's almost like a privilege to whistleblowers in a way. It
is. It's like, oh, so you're telling me that journalists who are using Patreon to fund another developer that they've talked about, that's not a conflict of interest. There was a post that came out last night about Kotaku's Patricia Hernandez and how Stephen Totillo, was saying I believe that if journalists have if there's a conflict of interest, they need to recuse themselves from writing about these people. And yet Kotaku's darling Patricia Hernandez, there was on her personal blog a couple years ago, said that she was moving in with Anna Anthropy, who is a game developer. And then there's been a number of articles that Patricia has written about Anna Anthropy's games, and she's her roommate.
Mm.
So, that's a conflict of fucking interest. And this is stuff that's getting greenlit. And I think the reason why Kotaku is the biggest draw here is simply because Totillo is spineless. Absolutely 100% spineless. Or simply doesn't give a fuck.
I'm more leaning towards the spineless bit, and
yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if the Gawker network at large would have something to do with it. It's a pressure of their influence, really. Because I mean we've seen stuff like Jezebel and the main Gawker site, even places like Deadspin, have that clear sort of bias in favor of the social justice warriors.
Yeah, I really despise Jezebel on a whole. I try not to read there ever, because I look at what they say and I'm like, wow, you guys don't operate in the real world, do you? Let me check your Twitter. Oh, you have 500,000 tweets. You never leave your house. How is it you can live your life completely hidden behind a computer monitor and express or experience sexism and hatred of women and misogyny and all that shit? These are words on a screen. Grow the fuck up. like you can turn it off and walk away. Like this is, you know, getting PTSD from Twitter. I can understand getting some kind of, you know, you're being harassed constantly. It might have some lasting effect, but you know, to go around and say like you're experiencing the same thing soldiers in combat experience, fuck you.
Yeah, that's,
you know,
no comparison.
No, when you're playing the victim card constantly, which is what you see from a lot of the posts on TIA, are these people with no grasp of reality that live in some delusional fantasy world where they, you know, they have therapy pets and they live with their parents until they're 38. Because, you know, someone on, you know, I went to WebMD and I self-diagnosed myself. Apparently I'm an anemic otherkin that is married to like Loki or some shit. You know, it's just like
it's a privilege in victimhood. That's what it is.
It is. It's the oppression Olympics. It's a real thing. It's an absolute real thing.
It's almost ironic how they talk about how they want to dismantle this sort of privilege, and what they're doing is just trying to claim it for themselves. It's almost like what other Matt was saying. It's like a Game of Thrones sort of mentality.
It is. It really is. And then you've got journalists that only cover the small portion of it because they know it's what's going to bring clicks to the site, and they know that that's their number one attitude. Like, I'm sure you've seen the second Internet Aristocrat video.
Mm-hmm, absolutely.
I mean, I think that's Jim's best work, like hands down.
I agree.
He was angry as hell, and he definitely was like letting people know. And the fact that he has basically blown the lid off of. I mean, yes, it's Kotaku, but Kotaku's a key part of all this. And you know, come Monday, Stephen Totillo will still have his job. He shouldn't. I mean, if he has any respect for journalistic integrity, he would fire the offending staff members for conflict of interest and then resign his status, because that's what a person with integrity would do after letting so much stuff go to shit on their watch.
Yep.
And that's just like, that's the way I see it. But obviously I'm just one person with an opinion on the internet, and what do I matter? But, that's the way I see it.
Well, I think that's how a lot of people are starting to see it now with this whole situation. And maybe they've been seeing it sort of like this for a while and just didn't know that they were, part of a larger crowd, so to say. I mean, that's why I think this whole thing is brilliant for getting the conversation out there. Like, even if it's not being picked up by the major news outlets, it's still being picked up in places like Reddit and 4chan and Twitter. It's still being talked about.
It will, if it can be allowed to be talked about. We know that a Reddit mod from our gaming was like deleting thousands and thousands of comments.
Oh yeah.
Like, we know that there are people out there that are directly attempting to silence the discussion. That, like, Escapist Magazine, which I think is a just relatively abhorrent website. I dislike most of their content, but they're one of the only sites that are allowing the discussion to take place. Giant Bomb won't allow it. GameSpot won't allow it. IGN certainly won't allow it. I mean, IGN talked about the Phil Fish hacking and mentioned 4chan. You know what I mean? Like, Polygon had more journalistic integrity to not mention the person who alleged to have done it or the group, even though, like, there's so much evidence to support that they did not. You know, it's like I'm talking with Rich from Review Tech USA about the hacking soon, and you know, to kind of clear up a few things, because I've been somehow elected V's unofficial spokesperson, at least in this regard, to talk to them. And, you know, because I feel that, like, you can tell with the response back to Zoe, there's been a lot of, I'm trying to think of the right word, a lot of coincidences this week, or odd occurrences this week, that have kind of been, like, directly related to video games. You know, like, some people are trying to now claim that PSN going down yesterday was a result of this particular situation. You know, and the way 4chan looks at it is with, like, the Fine Young Capitalists Indiegogo page getting taken down and Phil Fish's site getting taken down, that they're being targeted to push them to react. You know.
Yeah.
And they're actively trying not to. They're actively trying to, like, figure this thing out and not overreact, because some people have been getting really pissed off and wanting to kind of, you know, do something that would validate everyone's thoughts and opinions on V and 4chan in general before this event started.
I mean, just blaming them too is it's a big cop out. Like, all you have to do is just say, in whatever article goes up, whenever it goes up, oh, it was the fault of 4chan, a bunch of internet misogynists, internet hate machine, and that's it. That's the end of the story. And then no one will bat an eye at it.
Well, it's one of the things that cracks me up, though, is when the internet hate machine, donates $5,000 to a feminist-led game jam in one day and creates a character that is essentially their daughter for that game jam. There's something up there to take notice with. There's something there you can look at and go, okay, there's, something is happening, something is changing. This is worth looking at. But I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. These people are, and they've closed their ranks off. They don't want to talk about it. And I think that's why it's cool that we're doing this podcast. You've got over 120,000 listener or viewers on the TumblrInAction. Mm-hmm. So that's a good number of people. And the more talk, the more tell their friends, and then the more these discussions can happen. I'm hoping that there is a thing at PAX that will happen next week. Unfortunately, I fly to the Northwest the week after.
Ouch.
So I'm like, I can't get there. But I'd love to go. I'd love to go see it live. I have friends who are going to be there. I've been getting contacted from people who are going to be PAX enforcers and going to be at PAX. And they're like, we'll take pictures, we'll take video, whatever you need. We'll get you information. And so, people want to see what's going to happen.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
It's exciting. It's just all really exciting times.
Yeah, it's, dangerous and difficult times, but exciting nonetheless. So, there was one thing that I wanted to mention about the whole being talked about on TumblrInAction. We actually did get accused of trying to cover some stuff up, nuking threads and whatnot, almost like what games did. And I guess since I got a little bit of an audience here, and it won't just be said in a deleted thread, because I know I've said this in some threads and it's been deleted already. But we were really sort of afraid of what would happen if the admins came in and started shadow banning people, because a lot of the Zoe Quinn stuff had personal information in it and a bunch of docs, and we didn't know where the admins would draw the line there. So this was sort of a reactionary measure on our part. And as we've seen some stuff in our games and I believe our videos, some people have actually been shadow banned for posting stuff about it, and posting the Zoe post or Internet Aristocrats video. And this was just sort of a measure on our end to make sure that good people don't have their accounts banned, because if it's something that we can prevent to help people out, even if they're yelling and screaming at us in the meantime, we're still going to do it. I mean, we have everyone's best interest in mind here, and that's just something that I really wanted to clear up in case there was any sort of confusion.
Yeah. I think everyone here wants to see, has good intentions for the discussion taking place, because we're tired of being told we're all these things that we're not. Mm-hmm. And we're tired of being treated a certain way, because there might be a few bad apples out there, but for the most part, as a gaming community, we're not like that. And you go to these events. I've gone to E3, I've gone to Comic-Con, I've gone to PAX, I've gone to all these things. Women are there, people of minorities are there, people of color, transgendered. It doesn't matter. No one cares. You pick up a controller, you play a game, you're playing a game. That's it. But they're trying to divide us, and they're trying to, make us hate each other, because it's serving their benefit to come on in and act like the moral high ground, to follow their lead. And hopefully that relinquishes a little bit. And I think I think the grip is loosening a little bit, just because of all the people that are going, whoa, hold on, there's more shit here.
Yeah, I think this is a subject that has long been needed to be talked about, and now finally, we have an excuse to talk about it. Of course, I've said that multiple times already, but one more can't hurt.
No,
but
I'm sure we'll all say it again.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But I guess we'll go ahead and wrap this thing up.
Sure.
Thanks again for coming on and being a part of this. I really
yeah,
appreciate
it.
And I guess for everyone else out there, we'll catch you on the next Tumblr in Action podcast. Hey guys, thanks for listening to the Tumblr in Action podcast. If you'd like to be a guest host on a future podcast, please send me a message on Reddit, Tumblr, or Twitter. I'm known as the Hat2 on all 3 platforms, so shoot me a message and we'll see what we can do about bringing you on. Again, thanks so much for listening. We'll see you next time.